Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. Ukraine War News Update, third part there for the 2nd of July 2024. A Geopolitics video to give us an indication of what is going on concerning the war in Ukraine. I might just have a little bit of mission creep to talk about the immunity decision in the US that took place yesterday, just in response to some comments on a video I did about that yesterday. But we'll start with the unfortunate, sad news that Aidos Sadyukov, who was a Kazakhstani opposition leader, he has died in a Kiev hospital 2 weeks after there's an assassination attempt on his life. If you remember, I reported that. Journalist and Kazakh opposition figure gave his life for Kazakhstan, said his wife, announcing Aidos's death. So that is sad news, and it is thought that the present Kazakh government might have been behind that. And what times we live in, says Tim White. Russia takes over the revolving presidency of the UN Security Council, while Putin's biggest ally in the West, Hungary, holds a EU presidency for 6 months. This morning, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán arrived in Kiev for the first time since 2012. Anton Gerashchenko says, I can't believe it, but Russia not only continues to be in the UN, but will also chair the Security Council this month. Please check out my live chat video live stream with Talaria, where we discussed that the UN Security Council situation whereby the Russian Federation sits on that council as a permanent member. It shouldn't, it effectively doesn't, but does, and what can be done about that. Anyway, Peskov has already given an interview on what Russia plans to do this month. Quote, Russia, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, remains faithful to its obligations and maintains a responsible approach, calling on other nations to cooperate and respect international rules. Really? Really? It just sounds like an outright mockery, because it is exactly that. Russia is blatantly mocking all UN member states. Russia should have been expelled long ago, should never been in, but it seems like the world is waiting for more upheaval to get there. It's a shame and very sad. And then Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is, well, as it says, will visit. He is indeed in Kiev at the moment. First trip there since the beginning of the invasion, since 2012, by all accounts. It'd be fascinating to be a fly on the wall in those discussions. Right, the appointment of Kaja Kallas as the EU Foreign Affairs Chief has caused great anger among Russians. Of course, she's very staunchly pro-Ukrainian. This is not only in Russia, but also among many who live in Europe, primarily in Estonia. The number of messages and social networks and the media aimed at discrediting Kaja Kallas has skyrocketed. It is obvious. I mean, of course, the disinformation mechanisms are probably being shifted into top gear here as the Russians mobilize their bots and trolls. But it's obvious that Russia has launched an information attack at full power, and the Estonian media are falling into this pit as well. Every day, the Estonian media publish articles that in one way or another denigrate the work of Kallas and her cabinet. The main discontent is the increase in taxes and inflation, which is higher than in other countries. However, when discussing this, the media always misses several key facts. It cannot be said that Kaja and her government do not make mistakes. This is not true at all, but the main reason for an increase in expenses is the war unleashed by Russia in Ukraine and the fact that we are now forced to spend huge amounts of money on defense. I mean, that is the point, right? It's a bit like if a hurricane comes along and like rips into your property and ruins your fences, and okay, you've got insurance maybe, or maybe you don't. If you don't have insurance, then you kind of like, dagnam it, and you're angry at the world. But it's just the way of the world is we now have to spend money fixing up our property. Or if you have got insurance, then you have to pay a large excess on that to get this fixed. And it's just the nature of the beast. It's not your own fault that you have to build that stuff back up to what it was. If you want to operate how you were, then you need to spend more money. In other words, if you want to operate in the safety of the European Union, not afraid of being attacked by Russia, then you have to spend money to support Ukraine. But it's not anyone's fault other than Russia's fault here. Now, where you can blame the universe and the way that our weather systems work on a hurricane coming through your house. There's much more agency that can be attached to Russia in using their volition to, or Putin using his volition to attack Ukraine here. So there's only one person to blame as far as we understand geopolitics. I don't want to get into the whole free will debate here, but that is how I would interpret that. And yeah, if you want to blame someone, don't blame Callas, blame Putin. The main reason for the increase in expenses of the war in Ukraine and spending huge amounts of money on defence and media are also silent about the fact that Estonia had close ties with Russia under the Centre Party. The Centre Party even had a friendship agreement with United Russia. Putin's party business in Estonia is closely tied to Russia, and the loss of Russian investment hit the Estonian economy hard. Despite everything, Estonia remains the country with the smallest gross government debt among the EU countries. Estonian media also wrote much less about the scandals of the Tallinn mayor from the Centre Party related to corruption and about corruption in this party in general, about their mistakes in power. But Kaja Kallas and her party are attacked literally on a daily basis. The media should be... it keeps doing this. The media should remain neutral, but there is no trace of this. Estonian media should explain daily that the increase in spending is related to aid to Ukraine, defense spending, and a severance of trade relations with Russia. But the bullying of Kaja Kallas is simply massive and is present in almost every Estonian news agency. Manipulation of information, quotes from Russian sources or commentators, as well as comments from the Estonian media themselves on any topics related to the ruling party occupy a huge part of Estonian information field. Against this background, support for conservative far-right parties is growing, as in Europe as a whole, and this is what Russia usually achieves. The question arises, are our media so independent? There is no ideal government, and there can't be. Kaja and her party also make mistakes, but the behaviour of the media now raises a lot of questions about their neutrality and professionalism. Also, these information attacks show that Russia is really afraid of her appointment because she is holds a very tough position regarding Russia. There will be more sanctions and more support for Ukraine, and Russia does not like this. Really interesting, and these guys in the Baltics are on the forefront of the Russian disinformation campaigns, on the battlefields, really, of the information war. If you read Jessica Auro's book, Russia's Trolls, there's an awful lot of talk about the Baltics and about Finland, being right on the forefront of Norway of these information attacks. And I really feel for someone who's trying to do the right thing, but being hamstrung by her own compromised media landscape. Now, Russia has sent Kilo-class attack submarines close to the Irish Sea on 2 separate occasions since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, according to Bloomberg yesterday, citing unnamed sources. Russia really are pushing the envelope as much as they can, bloody everywhere, aren't they? And Turkey, Bulgaria and Romania have started demining the Black Sea to provide more safe access for the grain corridor. That is good news there, because that will enable Ukraine to have much safer and much more exports out through the Black Sea and into the Med. The Clooney Foundation, so George Clooney is married to a human rights lawyer, and the Clooney Foundation has filed a lawsuit with the Austrian Federal Prosecutor's Office against the Russian military for murder and rape in Ukraine. The foundation represents the interests of 2 Ukrainian women who were raped during the Russian occupation of a village in the Kiev region in the early days of the war. The Russians also shot the husband of one of the women. And it's really good that there is accountability that is being sought now while the war is still going on. And talking about Russian disinformation, Jackson Hinkle, who is an American dingbat who has just been recently in occupied Zaporizhia, I think he was, occupied Donetsk, hanging around in Berdyansk, speaking to Russians because, that's what you do. And he's just got back from Russia, and he's now spreading outright disinformation, claiming that Ukrainian President Zelensky's wife just bought a 4.4 million euro Bugatti sports car with American taxpayer dollars, and presents this handily Bugatti stamped invoice, which of course has been easily debunked. As the community notes below says, This is a fake story widely debunked in Europe. The alleged auto invoice is in English for a dealership in France with Australian specs. iPhones offer instant translation for this page, so on and so forth. It's just like, come on, guys. But then that's all you need. That will just go, someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene will pick that up and talk about it in Congress. Job done. Job done. This is how easy disinformation is and how much we have to fight against it. And yet, as part of this kind of disinformation splurge that comes from the Kremlin, comes from actually not from as much from the Kremlin as from, although they do talk about Russophobia, as from propagandists on state television. They're always talking about how the West, we're also Russophobic. Why are we so anti-Russia? Whilst at the same time saying that you're next, we're going to blow you up with nuclear missiles. It's absolutely insane. And as Prune60 here, it says, who's a really good supporter of Julia Davis from Russian Media Monitor, anybody else find it strange that Russian state media keeps yelling about Russophobia and Russophobic agendas from the West, but they keep threatening to murder us all? And usually over sanctions that they say are making them stronger. Yeah, go figure. It doesn't make any sense. Right, Antony Blinken. So Blinken said this message in response to Zelensky's statement the day before that Ukraine and the West see Ukrainian victory in the war against Russian aggression differently. Blinken said, success is a strong, successful, square bracket success. So I don't know quite what he's talking about before, but the idea is it was generally what is meant by success. It's a strong, successful Ukraine, increasingly integrated with the West, and a country that can stand on its own feet militarily, economically, democratically. And we have the policies in place to make sure that's exactly what happens. So Blinken trying to be strong in supporting Ukraine there. Zelensky noted that there is widespread fear in the West, and this was really the important part, and it wasn't so interesting what Blinken said. That's all, yeah, lovely and whatnot, but it's this idea that actually this is what is going on in the thought processes among many Westerners. Zelensky noted that there is widespread fear in the West about the potential collapse of Russia and concerns about the country becoming even worse without Putin. So this is what might also be holding people back. It's not necessarily about escalation or just escalation, mutually assured destruction and whatnot. It's also about, well, if Ukraine does win and wins comprehensively, then Russia could fall apart. And if Russia fall apart, you've got nuclear stuff falling into the hands of who knows what, as these separate republics disintegrate away from a union, a federation in the Russian Federation. So many people, or there are many analysts who say that there are politicians and whatnot who are afraid of that outcome, and that is what is holding them back from supporting Ukraine as much as they should do. So every time I taught the Diary of Anne Frank, the students in my class would ask, how in the world could that have happened? How could normal people let it happen? Look around us, friends. Okay, so I'm just going to get on to some American politics. I'm going to stay with Ukraine at the moment, because this is what in a rally Trump has said with regard to Mike Flynn. So Mike Flynn is a pretty controversial former military figure who is likely to feature in the next Trump administration.
General Flynn, he's some general, he's some man. He took abuse like nobody could have handled, and he came out bigger, better, stronger than ever before. We love him. He's a leader, and you just stay wealthy and healthy and well and everything.
I love it that the first thing Trump does when he says you need to stay, and he went into that was it a Chick-fil-A and spoke to all those people working behind the counter. It's like, you doing well? How's the money going? You're making lots of profit, as if like these people working behind the counter are like, what? First place he goes all the time is wealth and money making as the only metric really for success. And he goes, I just hope you remain wealthy. Just to me, that says all you need to know about Putin. Freudian slip there, about Trump. Honestly, concentrate on the little things.
And well and everything. I want you to have great lives in general. You just have to stay healthy, because we're bringing you back. We're going to bring you back.
My wife's going crazy.
Well, we're proud of you. I want to thank General Flynn for being a very brave man who was absolutely tortured, and he's stronger now.
He was absolutely tortured. What are you talking about?
He's stronger now than he ever was, and it takes somebody very special to pull that off.
He just talks bollocks, Trump. It's just word salad in his head. It just goes that comes from his kind of general intuitions. There's no kind of structured thought processes that come out. He's not trying to make any greater claims that are connected to his sense of a policy agenda or, a moral framework. It's like, this guy's great. He's amazing. He was tortured. He had the worst experience in the universe, but I brought him back. I just wish him the greatest wealth because we're going to make him great. We're going to make everything great. We're going to make you all great. And honestly, you're all going to be gazillionaires by the time you're 5 months into my presidency. I was like, what are you talking about, mate? But anyway, why Mike Flynn is a problem is because he is deeply pro-Russian and deeply anti-Ukrainian. Even before the war started, what was it? He was saying that, where do we have it? Mike Flynn paints Putin as a hero to conspiracy theorists. Mike Flynn voices support for Russia ahead of a potential invasion. So before the invasion took place, he was supporting Russia. Paints Putin as hero. Mike Flynn says Ukraine's independence is not vital to the US. Trump ally Mike Flynn attacks Ukraine's Zelensky as a dangerous fool. Here's what Mike Flynn admitted he lied to the FBI about. I mean, he's not a decent... Mike Flynn is a wingnut. He's an absolute wingnut. He's not a serious, sensible appointment at all, and yet this is the kind of person that Trump is going to go to. So if you think Trump is going to be good for Ukraine, just look no further than this. I mean, I don't want to go any further into Mike Flynn because and it is really, really worrying. Now we're going to get onto the immunity thing, but I'm going to stay on Russia, and this is super, super important because there's a couple of things to point out. You'll find, first of all, in fact, I'll go to this next point first. Right. You'll find that people who have supported the immunity decision by the Supreme Court are just basically massive fans of Trump. Or really, really like the Republican Party. And so this is something that conservative judges have done. It's associated with Trump. And therefore, I'm not a massive fan of Trump, but this is a good thing because X, Y, Z. What you'll find is when people have been asked about whether this is a good thing. So a lot of polling has come out concerning immunity. Perhaps the most interesting finding, definition of a personality cult, says Alexander Carlson. But the most interesting finding is that Republicans think Trump should be immune for his official acts. But when a generic president, i.e. no name attached, is asked about, Republicans don't think the president should be immune from prosecution. In other words, they accept that this is a bad idea, but it's okay because it's concerning Trump mainly. Although this is a decision that effectively concerns all presidents, it's in light of Trump, and it's because of Trump that this is happening, and it's so that he can get off his existing convictions and court cases and do anything he likes when he wins in November 2024, and that's what Republicans see, or at least Trump Republicans see here. So it's just double standards. This is a bad thing. Oh, it's Trump. No, it's a good thing. But what if it's Obama? Oh, it's a bad thing. But what if it's Trump? Oh, it's a good thing. So you're not really interested in the actual substance of what this means. You just want Trump to have as much power as possible. That's it. I just want him to just go crazy at bonkers and do Trumpy stuff. Yeah. Now, what's interesting in 2020, Putin did the same thing, right? Now, had I talked to you about this 2 years ago, about how Putin in 2020 signed a bill giving him and ex-presidents lifetime immunity, I wonder what you would have thought. If you are someone who has sat on my threads defending this decision, as some of you did yesterday, telling me to stay in my lane and not cast my opinions over this and that, because this is, of course, their channel. It is the channel of the viewers, but I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, not sorry. Had I said that Putin had done this, I guarantee you to a T, anyone supporting Ukraine, anyone with any passing knowledge about the democratic ordeals of Russian citizens would have said that that was a terrible thing. Russia's Putin signs a bill giving ex-presidents lifetime immunity. Russia's Vladimir Putin signs bill giving presidents lifetime immunity. Russian bill to grant ex-presidents lifetime immunity passes. Russia moves to protect Putin from prosecution. Vladimir Putin signs law granting Russian presidents lifetime immunity. So on and so forth. This has been done before. Who was it done by? A genocidal dictator. If you want to say that's cool for Trump to have that it's somehow constitutional, even though it's not mentioned in the Constitution, and where it does mention that concerns private stuff, and it's very clear that that's not cool for they aren't privately immune, which is why they couldn't say that. But where it's had an absence of statement about this, then the Supreme Court filled in the gaps to support their own president. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's
Jen Psaki, having worked for two previous presidents,
said this publicly 1,000 times, to Nicole's point. And I was reading today, if anybody's following along, on the lovely Project 2025 plan on page 560. This is the first line of that part. The next conservative administration should embrace the Constitution and understand the obligation of the executive branch to use its independent resources and authorities to restrain the excesses of both the legislative and judicial branches. This is the plan that Steve Bannon has been holding up in his recent interviews, before he went to jail today, of course, to say this is what we're going to do. And the justices, what they did today is basically, I mean, I worked for two presidents, Nicole worked for a president. You haven't needed this immunity in the past. There have been bad things that have happened under presidents. But like they haven't. They've
right, but they've done the bad things even without.
They've done
right,
the bad things
exactly.
even without. Nobody's walking around waiting for the immunity. The presidents I worked for didn't look for the immunity, and now you have the person. So you're asking the American public, to Rachel's point, to vote for people and trust the presidents they elect will have the morality and the benevolence to not abuse. That's essentially what they're doing.
Absolutely. It just blows my mind. And by the way, John DeVries, thank you for commenting here, but you are turning into a leftist mouthpiece. No, this is about democracy. This is not about leftism. This is about not wanting autocracy in one of the most important positions in the geopolitical world. I don't want a single human being able to be immune from any kind of terrible activity that they could commit whilst being in power doing that supposedly on behalf of their country. And well, we'll come to my next point in a second, but not what you think. I think stay in your lane. You have 43,000 followers because of 1 and 2, my first and second videos of the day. Well done. Don't listen to my third. Not because you're excellent geographical political opinion. Maybe you should opinionate more on UK political opinions. Well, I'm doing a live stream tomorrow night and the night after on that. If you care to join me, please come and join me to talk about UK politics. I'll be doing it for over 3 hours over the next 2 days. Are you surprised by all of this? Yes, I'm super surprised by this. Because it shouldn't have happened. And well, I'm not surprised because there's a conservative majority in the Supreme Court that is not just a conservative majority in the old school kind of way, but is a very much a Trumpian majority. But please don't tell me to stay in my lane, because you can jog on to a different road structure as far as I'm concerned. You can go swimming because I will drive in this lane if I want to. Now, I just want to deal with this point. It comes up all the time. It's a really common, I don't know why, really. It's a very common right-wing talking point that is essentially not correct, right? So Nighthawk 2174 says, just to be clear, the US is not a democracy. It is a constitutional republic. This is actually a rather important distinction, and while it may seem semantic, it's a foundational concept. I did a whole section on this in another video, and by the way, Benny Pie has sorted out artificial intelligence to survey all of my videos and transcribe them. Every single, not transcribe them, summarize them amazingly. I'm going to share this with you soon. The search function is just being sorted out and indexed. But this is incredible. So thanks to one of my viewers for doing that. And I was able then, or he was able to find a video that I spoke about this in before. I'm actually just going to read you very quickly a very good synopsis of why this position is incorrect. And yeah, okay. Is the United States a democracy or a republic? We often hear a question debated in person and online by Americans who care deeply about making sure the government works for the people. Is the United States a democracy or a republic? Here's the answer. The United States is both a democracy and a republic. We promise we're not dodging the question. It would be much easier if one word was absolutely correct and the other was not, but the terms are not mutually exclusive. There's an overlap, right? The United States can accurately be defined as both a democracy and a republic. Let's break down why. Yes, the United States a democracy. Yes, it is a democracy since we, the people, hold the ultimate political power. We're not a direct democracy, but we are a representative democracy. This is where our history education might add some confusion. We are commonly taught about democracy is taught that democracy is a product of ancient Greece. It's their word, demokratia. After all, the city-state of Athens is credited with implementing a system of government of and by the people whereby eligible citizens would congregate to make decisions. They'd make the decisions themselves or directly, not through any elected representatives. That system of government, better understood today as direct democracy, lives on in the United States in the form of ballot initiatives and referenda. Some states and localities afford their citizens the right to use those measures to directly enact, change, or repeal laws themselves. More commonly, we exercise our political power in a different way, by voting in elections to choose our representatives. That's representative democracy. It's the same kind of process in the UK, slightly different mechanism and whatnot, but we have first past the post representative democracy, where I go out, vote for my local MP who goes and represents me in Parliament. The Constitution does not use the term democracy, it's true, but as Eugene Volokh notes in the Washington Post, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Noel Webster, Justice James Wilson and Chief Justice John Marshall all use the word. Those scholars understood representative democracy, the American variety, to be a democracy all the same. Is the United States a republic? Yes, the US is a republic because our elected representatives exercise political power. History also tells us that Rome was a republic, unlike Athens. When its monarchy was overthrown, Rome developed a republican system of government whereby citizens elected officials who were empowered to make decisions for the public. That's the core of how our government works. While democracy and republic have been historically pitted against one another, the reality is that the two terms enjoy considerable overlap. So what term should I use? It's really up to you. In practice, the word republic has the same meaning as the term representative democracy, and a representative democracy is a form of democracy in the same way that a Granny Smith apple is a form of apple. We shouldn't say it's inaccurate to use apple to describe a Granny Smith apple. It's okay. It's nested hierarchies. You've got to understand how kind of language works here. It's okay to follow the footsteps of Jefferson, Adams, Webster and Chief Justice Marshall and simply call our representative democracy a democracy. But it's also accurate to call the United States a republic. It's mostly that about your preference of words. Hopefully this will help lower the heat in the online debate. Let's put our energy toward working to fix our government so it represents the people. Yeah, absolutely. So please don't come up with that same argument again. It's just not very good. Somebody saying US judges have absolute immunity, police have qualified immunity. This is not a shocking decision. To which brilliantly True Blue Terrier RMC says judges do not enjoy absolute immunity, and then goes on to just smash it out of the water. So if you're going to make claims, so what happened yesterday on a thread to that, lots of people who disagree with me appear to be the ones who just want Trump to have more power. And they just really like Trump. So because it was happening in the context of Trump, it must be right, and therefore I must be wrong, and therefore I need to get out of my lane, and I don't know what I'm talking about, and blah blah blah. But they never put any substance with that. It's these flyaway comments like, "Oh, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. So just stop it." It's like, that's a mere assertion. The moon is made of cheese. I can do that too. Brilliant. Okay, is the moon made of cheese? No, but I've asserted it is. Does that make it true? No. So mere assertions are rubbish. You need to justify them. Bring the receipts. And yesterday, when I talked about the decision by the Supreme Court, I read to you large swaths of the dissenting opinions of two of the three dissenting judges. And that was bringing some receipts. So if you're going to have an issue, although I didn't go into the legal rationale as to exactly why they disagreed, because that would have made it a very long and tiring video. There were some receipts there, and you need to deal with the receipts rather than just make these mere assertions. Now, it gets even more worrying. So when you're looking at, I look at Ukraine and think you are striving to be a democracy. Yep, you've got corruption, you've got issues, you're at war, blah, 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 all these things, but you're trying really hard to get over them because you have a sense of where you're going. And you have this ideal up there that you're fighting for. And that's what I admire. And that's what I feel I'm doing in supporting Ukraine. But then I look at what's going on in the US. It's like you're trending towards, at least with some elements of society, trending towards autocracy and authoritarianism. And it's deeply, deeply scary. I read Oath and Honor by Liz Cheney. I advise anyone out there to go and read that. She's a conservative and super actual conservative, like a proper Republican, right? And her book, Oath and Honor, was an absolute, well, I wouldn't say delight to read. It was I listened to it as an audiobook. It was a great read, but it was scary, deeply scary on how there are many, many people, Trump at the top, who wanted to scale back that sense of moving towards this great ideal of what the country should be and actually trying to trend it towards authoritarianism. And she sounded the alarm, Liz Cheney, after Trump has shared calls for her to face a televised military tribunal for treason. Now remember, there are people out there calling for her to be put to death for treason. So you now have the nominee for president for the Republican Party calling on somebody who is of the Republican Party to be put through a televised military tribunal. Donald Trump reposted an image calling Liz Cheney guilty of treason and for her to be prosecuted in televised military tribunals. As Liz Cheney then replied to that, this is the type of thing that demonstrates yet again that you are not a stable adult and you're not fit for office. You're not fit for office. If this is what you call campaigning and sensible policy making or policy advocation, I don't get it. Like, this is insane. This is insane, the point that the US political landscape is getting to. And it gets worse, right? So this is Joe Scarborough, who is a former Republican lawmaker who now is an anchor is Morning Joe on MSNBC. And this is what a Republican at the airport meets him with.
I can't wait for Uncle Donnie to win. I can't wait. He'll get rid of all you fucking liberals. You liberals are gone when he fucking wins. You fucking blowjob liberals are done. Uncle Donnie's gonna take this election landslide, cuz. Landslide, you fucking half a blowjob. Landslide. Get the fuck out of here, you scumbag. I can't.
That is the state of political debate. That is the state of things. That's a polarization. But, when you're talking about putting people up for military tribunal to be done for treason on television, and can you understand how someone might react like this? You're whipping up a populist groundswell of absolute polarized views that are, like, I can't wait for Donald Trump to get into power, to get rid of all of you, to get rid of all you guys, to get rid of all you liberals. What does it mean to get rid of? We're going back to just mass tribunals. Like, I'm in rant mode because I'm freaking scared for the world when we are relying on the US to stand up and be counted, to stand up for democracy around the world, to stand, you want to call it republic? Okay. To stand up for representative democracy around the world and the republic that it is, to stand up for political ideals that are above itself, that are above someone like Donald Trump, that are above the individual. To be the shining beacon that so many have often claimed the US is. So that countries like Ukraine have something to look up to and something to look towards. As they are struggling, drowning in the waters, asking for help, Donald Trump and his ilk are looking on and going, "Heh, you're not my problem. You can freaking drown." And then as a result, now with that immunity decision yesterday, your man has now started moving to overturn his conviction in the New York trial. He is using this to his own ends. Former President Trump took the action hours after a US Supreme Court ruling granted him immunity for official acts committed in office. And to just give you some detail on this is Ben Marsalis, who is himself a lawyer, talking on the Midas Touch about how this would happen.
To the White House, and she testified about Donald Trump's habits and procedures in the White House. So what Donald Trump is now arguing before Justice Merchan is, even though all of that stuff's not core presidential power, even though all of that stuff is not what Trump was actually being criminally charged with, nonetheless, that falls under official conduct that should not have been introduced into evidence based on the Supreme Court's ruling. Remember, the Supreme Court went above and beyond what Donald Trump was asking them to do. Donald Trump was asking them to do a lot. Declare that I have the power to order SEAL Team 6, to kill my political opponents, to massacre other political parties, to provide nuclear secrets to enemies. Let me do that, Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, we're going to let you do that.
I'm just going to interrupt because I know some people say that's absurd. It's absurd. You would never do that. What you do when you're arguing about stuff like this in philosophy, I love a good reductio ad absurdum. So reductio ad absurdum is you reduce something to its most extreme levels, right? And you do that to see if the logic holds. So, and then you say, okay, if you think that's ridiculous at this extreme level, and it's the same, it's logically analogous to this thing over here, which isn't so extreme, but you think you shouldn't be able to do that, then you shouldn't be able to do this either. And that's why it's useful to do reductios. So here you might say, oh, it's absurd. He would never demand to shoot the opponent, his political opponent. Okay, he might not, right? But if you think he shouldn't be allowed to do that, if you agree that he should not be immune from shooting his political opponent, then he shouldn't be immune from doing anything, right? That X over, he's immune from doing X. Well, there's no logical difference between doing X and A, B, and C. So the A, B, and C over here, you clearly want him to be able to do. But actually, if that's no logically different from the X, then he has no right to do A, B, and C, which means the whole immunity falls apart. That's why you do the reductio. That's why you take it to the absurd levels, because it shows that it is logically untenable. It's just massively unsound.
That's official conduct. Go for it. But we're going to go a step farther, Donald Trump. And even where it was unofficial conduct, like conduct that you did before you were in office or conduct you did in campaigning, we're going to prevent prosecutors, where it's determined to be unofficial conduct, from ever even using any of the conduct that you engaged in the White House as evidence against you for your unofficial acts. So that is what Trump is arguing before Justice Merchan. We're 10 days ahead of sentencing now. You may be saying, but look, the conduct in the Manhattan District Attorney case involves conduct by Donald Trump before he was in office. He made the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, and the falsification of business records plot took place before Donald Trump was in office. So the criminality, the conduct is unofficial acts, right? Right. However, what Trump's going to argue is, here's what the Supreme Court said. All of that evidence that was introduced that involved things I said and did in the White House, that should not have been allowed at the trial. There should be a retrial, or vacate the jury verdict and basically let me go. Or let's delay everything, delay sentencing, and we now need to go to the United States Supreme Court. And
so just to explain that, just in case you didn't get that. So there was the decision that the immunity should be only for official stuff, but for private things, it doesn't cover that. And with the hush money case, the criminality happened in the kind of private realm over here because it was before he was president. But evidence to support that took place while he was president in the White House. There were meetings there, and they used that as evidence to support the case, and he was convicted on all 34 counts, right? What the Supreme Court did yesterday is not only say you're immune from prosecution for things you did, but you in an official capacity, but you also cannot, and they didn't need to do this, and this is why it's outrageously pro-Trump. Like they basically said, what do you want? We'll give you more. It's like anything that happens while he is president cannot be used for evidence, even for things that are prior to that or possibly private things out there outside of that context. It's really, really damaging, I think, to the rule of law and essentially to democracy. You're getting back to some kind of monarchy or authoritarian situation.
Trial. Right off the top here,
this is Mark Elias, who is a lawyer on the right here.
Fix. Could Congress pass a law stating that a president doesn't have immunity? And if so, would that law supersede this Supreme Court ruling? Or could the justices have the opportunity to discard it?
I don't think that there's an easy fix to this. I mean, look, the Supreme Court here knew exactly what it was doing. You know, people who are commenting and saying, oh, the Supreme Court is naive about the realities of Donald Trump. No. The Supreme Court's not naive about the realities of Donald Trump. The Supreme Court knew exactly what they were doing, both with respect to impacting the past cases, the cases that are pending, but also what it means if Donald Trump wins again, right? Donald Trump is saying he will be a dictator for a day. Donald Trump is saying that he will exact retribution. Donald Trump is working with Project 2025 and others to allow him to take over the entire executive branch to mete out retribution through frivolous criminal prosecutions and investigations. So do I think that this could be fixed by Congress passing a law? No. Why? Because the Supreme Court is in on it. You know, the Supreme Court did this because this was the result they wanted. And it's about time that we look in the mirror and rather than seeing a bunch of Harvard and Yale educated people who drink wine at cocktail parties and eat crudité and send their kids to the same prep schools that liberals do and think that they have the same value system, to realize they don't have the same value system. This is what they intended to do. And I am at a loss for words as to how this gets fixed, because I don't think if Congress passed a law saying, look, the made up immunity that the Supreme Court created, it goes away, I think the Supreme Court would say, no, you can't do that. We think that this is a matter of constitutional law and that trumps your statute.
And the only solution is reforming the Supreme Court, which has been on the cards anyway, but there you go. That I just felt I had to get that out because this is so huge. I think it's so important. And I know it's not directly to do with the Ukraine war, but hey-ho, whatever. I've changed where this lane has gone for this particular day. So there you go. Anyway, I'm going to go and get super angry with a cup of tea and just shout into my empty kitchen at the world. You're welcome to join me from wherever you are, just shouting at the world. Sometimes it's useful. But more useful is get out and vote. Just get out and vote.